Hello and welcome to this UniTaster On Demand event today. My name is John Cheek. I'm the founder and director of UniTasterDays, and I'll be hosting this event, which essentially means I'm going to introduce our speaker and introduce the topic we're going to be covering today, and that is studying abroad. So if you're watching this and you're potentially interested in studying outside of the UK, you are in the right place. Our speaker today is Stefan Watts. Stefan is the founder and director of Study Options, a role he's been in for 16 years, so he has a wealth of experience in relation to studying outside of the UK. He's going to cover studying abroad and what to expect and reasons you might want to consider doing so, and also focus on the main markets that Stefan works with, and that's Australia and New Zealand. So certainly if you're interested in studying abroad, this would be super relevant, but even more so if you're interested potentially in studying in Australia or New Zealand. With that, always conscious you've tuned in to hear from our excellent speaker, not for myself. I'll pass the floor to Stefan Watts, founder and director of Study Options. Over to you, Stefan.
Thank you, John, for that introduction. Thank you for letting me be part of your website with some of your videos that are on there. So thank you everyone for tuning in. As John said, I'm going to spend the next 10-15 minutes or so talking about studying abroad, but then with the emphasis on what is my subject area of Australia and New Zealand. So I'm just going to share my screen now. Initially, I guess anyone here who is listening to this has got a bit of an interest in studying somewhere other than the UK. So good place to start, and it's good that you're here to discover other options. And certainly when I kind of look back to my my school days and what was available, and I'm going back 20 odd years here, it was the choices outside of the UK weren't talked about too much. I mean, we used to hear a lot about the US, and particularly in relation to kind of sports scholarships and everything else. But outside of that, there was very little. So that when I actually went to ask for assistance and information on Australia, which is why I ended up studying, there wasn't really anyone that could help me or had any knowledge of it. So the first thing I would always say to anyone who is looking to study outside of the UK is there are so many options, and there's also a lot of help out there now. You know, unlike when I was looking to study overseas, there is a huge amount of help out there, whether it be publications, whether it be websites, but also various organizations that can assist with information and ultimately applying to other universities. So first bit of advice is you're in the right place. Make sure you look at all the options that are available for you. So don't start from the beginning discounting countries. Make sure you do a lot of research into those universities and the countries outside of the UK, whether that is the US, Canada, whether that's Europe, whether it's universities in Asia, or indeed in Australia and New Zealand. And then look, there's lots of different reasons why you might go to one over the other. There are some things that you shouldn't necessarily study overseas. And certainly my advice, certainly to budding lawyers, is that you probably want to study law in the area, in the country where you intend to practice. So there are a few courses like that where I think it's probably best to remain in the country where you intend to work or practice. Outside of that, it's definitely worth looking at various options that are available to you. So look, there's a couple of things to kind of to start with here. So why would someone from the UK look to go to another country to study? So it's a question that we get asked quite a lot, and I spend a lot of time talking about it. So I mean, initially, experience is a great place to start. So it's something very different. It puts you slightly outside of your comfort zone, which is only a good thing at the end of the day. It can be, depending on what you're looking to study, it can be the best possible place to study the degree that you are looking to study. So I'll use Australia here as an example, but if you look at something like marine biology, arguably one of the best places to study in the world, because you've got the Great Barrier Reef, you've got some amazing academics over there, you know, and obviously the wildlife and sea life is pretty incredible. So there are certain subjects that you may be better off studying outside of the UK. The opportunity to travel, again, it's such an important thing to be able to travel, to meet new people, to experience new things. But there are so many different reasons to do it. I think experience is one of the most important things, but also it gives you something different. And I say this to each and every one of my students that I deal with, is that studying overseas, and whether that is in Europe, in America, in Canada, in Asia, in Australia, it will change you. It will change you in some way, shape, or form. And I can't tell you how it will, but it will change you. It will make you stronger in some way. In terms of how you can do it, so there are a number of different ways of doing it. So if you are wanting to do your main degree, your full degree in the UK, but perhaps incorporate some overseas study in it, it's possible then to do an exchange semester or an exchange year. So you would enroll in your UK, your home university, and spend a year or 6 months at a host university in anywhere in the world. So that would be organised by your university. The fees you would end up paying are still to your home university. So that's a good way of incorporating an overseas experience into your existing degree. Obviously, there are a number of UK universities that will have a sandwich year, where that can be completed, or that's embedded within it, that will be completed in another country. Again, another really good way, and quite an affordable way of incorporating an overseas experience into your degree. All of our students will do either a full degree in Australia or New Zealand, or they will do what is called study abroad or test a semester. That means you can study for 1 semester or 2 semesters, up to a year, in a university, and use that experience then to decide possibly what you want to do afterwards. You may want to stay on, or you may want to return to the UK and then study a degree over here, or continue with what you've been studying elsewhere. In terms of how it works, so again, this will differ if you are going down the UK university route. That will all be done by your host university. So you will speak to the exchange and study abroad team at your host university in the UK, and they will arrange that placement for you. Outside of that, if you are looking to do your full degree overseas, you will need to find out what the system is and the processes are for each of the countries, or each country that you are looking to apply to. So that will vary quite a lot depending on where you are looking to go. So if you're looking at the US, you need to be thinking about it quite far in advance. If you are looking at various other countries, it may be that you can apply after you've received your A-level or IB results, or whatever else you're studying. So it is going to vary massively, but what I would always say is start researching as soon as you possibly can. So a lot of our students will be looking at their options within their kind of GCSE years, because it's important to put in a timeline there to reach the goal of getting out to the country where you intend to study your degree. So in terms of cost, it will vary massively depending on where you go, which country you go, but also which university you go to. And also it will depend very much on the subject you are studying. So typically, as an international student, you will be paying more fees than you would as a domestic student. Again, it's not necessarily true of everywhere. So certainly a number of students will go to somewhere like the Netherlands. So the Dutch universities there have very affordable fees. In Australia, US, Canada, and places like Hong Kong, Singapore, you will be paying full international fees. So there may be scholarships that you can tap into there. So important to do your research there. I know, for example, that in Singapore, if you commit to working for a Singaporean company for a certain period of time after you've studied there, the government will pay half your fees. So there are schemes out there. It's important to do your research and to look into different options that may be available to you. So now I'm going to go on and talk about what I do, which is advising students on studying in Australia and New Zealand. As John said earlier, I've been advising students in this place for 16 years now, having been an international student in Australia myself. So I studied 2 hours north of Sydney at the University of Newcastle. And for the last 16 years, I've been helping other students apply to Australia and New Zealand from the UK, from Europe. And in that time, we've assisted, I think at last count was about 95 different nationalities in achieving their goal and their dream of studying at university in Australia and New Zealand. So in terms of how the systems compare, obviously Australia and New Zealand, both English-speaking countries, their education systems are based on the UK education system. So you'll see that degrees are typically called the same thing. In most cases, they are the same length. And you'll see that many features of university life in both of those countries are very similar to what you would expect and experience in the UK. So because they're based on the British education system, there is a great, very strong recognition of degrees in the UK and globally. So if you studied your degree at a university in Australia and New Zealand, you can then come back to the UK and you can apply for a master's program to enter here in the UK. So they're absolutely equivalent to a degree that you would study here in the UK. I talked about earlier about, certain subjects are the best, look for where is the best place to study it. So if you look at somewhere like Australia and New Zealand, they are research-led, qualifications are recognised, respected all over the world. And as I said, it's sometimes going to be a better place for you to study a certain program. And on the next slide, you'll see a number of different rankings. And again, when you're looking at rankings, they're not the be all and end all. So just important to look at overall rankings, important to look at individual subject rankings. But there is so much more you need to be looking at, class sizes, location, number of students in your program, plus various other things. And at the end of the day, when you're choosing university, it needs to be about you. What is the right fit for you? Do you want a small university, or a small campus university, or do you want a larger university in the middle of a city? It's all very individual and all very unique to you. So one slight difference, university starts in Australia and New Zealand in February. There is another mid-year intake in July, but most students, most undergraduate students, would be commencing their studies in February this year. But for a number of courses, it is possible to start in July. So while our most popular program for students to study in Australia and New Zealand is a Bachelor of Arts. Bachelor of Arts is sits somewhere in between the UK model, which is quite narrow, and the US liberal arts system, which is so US liberal arts system, very, very broad. Australia and New Zealand, quite a lot broader, but it gives you the opportunity to make a degree that is very unique to you. So you'll see here in this diagram an example of a Bachelor of Arts degree. So you'll see you've got your major courses, which is the darker green there, the lighter green, or the kind of fluorescent green there, other courses from within the same faculty. And then you've got the light blue, which sometimes can be from the same faculty, but in the main will be from another faculty. So a number of universities actually insist that 25% of your study comes from another faculty. So it's a great way of essentially designing a degree that is very unique to you, continuing with subjects that you've enjoyed at school, or perhaps picking up some new subjects, as long as you've got the prerequisites to enter those. So for example, you could be studying English literature as your major, but you think, actually, I want to put a bit of business, I want a bit of accounting or marketing in there, or I want to continue with a bit of photography that I've been doing and it's a bit of an interest, bit of a hobby of mine. So it allows you, as I said, to create something that is very unique to you, which in our experience leads to very few dropouts from university. I mean, in the past 16 years, I could count on less than 2 hands the number of students who have left within a year or so, because I think they're not being told necessarily what to study. They have this amazing flexibility to be able to study what they want according to their interests. So in terms of costs, we spoke a little bit about this earlier, in that things will vary depending on university and subject. So in Australia and New Zealand, you will be paying full international fees, and there is a massive variation depending on where you are looking to study. So the least expensive are the lecture-based programs, so Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Commerce. Most expensive being the clinical programs, such as medicine and dentistry, and things like physiotherapy and veterinary science. So again, these will vary massively depending on which university you are looking to go to. In terms of finance, you are eligible to work up to 20 hours per week on a student visa, and then full-time in the holidays. So that's a great way of supplementing your living costs. It certainly shouldn't be looked at as a way of funding your studies, because you are there to study. You need to concentrate on that. At the end of your course, it is possible to apply for a post-study work visa. In terms of how that will work, you get towards the end of your course, and then you can apply for usually a 2-year work visa. Sometimes it's more, depending on country and actually where you've studied within that country. So that's a great way of getting that kind of first all-important role, and will allow you to work full-time for up to 2 years and maybe longer in that country before you then return to the UK, or before you then potentially look at other visas to apply to. In terms of scholarships, there are a number of scholarships available throughout Australia and New Zealand. They are all going to be pretty much based academic scholarships, so based on merit rather than, for example, US sporting scholarships, or based on financial need. Unfortunately, those do not exist in Australia and New Zealand, and it is going to be an academic merit-based system. So if you look at, giving you a couple of examples, if you are looking at, say, 3As at A-level, you could expect to receive a $15,000 per year scholarship from the University of Western Australia in Perth. So University of Western Australia would rank top 100 in the world. So really good scholarship there for a straight A student. Other universities, somewhere like the University of Tasmania, if you're an A's and B's type student, you could expect to receive a scholarship of up to maybe 25% per year. So they will, again, it's important to look at different universities and their offerings when it comes to scholarships. And again, this is something that we are able to advise students on. In terms of the application, it is fairly straightforward. It's not very lengthy. It requires you to complete application forms for each university you want to apply to. So important to sorry, bear in mind here that this application process comes outside of UCAS. So a number of our students will apply to their 5 universities in the UK, but also apply to a number of universities in Australia and New Zealand. When they then receive their final results, their grades, they can then decide which university or which course that they want to take further and accept. So with the exception of medicine and dentistry and various kind of performance-based subjects which will require portfolios auditions, there are no additional tests for the majority of the degrees. In order to apply, we would need to have your predicted grades from your school, and as I said, completion of application form, copy of passport, and personal statement. Applications get sent off by us, and you should expect turnaround time of about 4 to 6 weeks on an undergraduate application. Can be more if it is things like those clinical programs, medicine and dentistry, which will take longer. They are quota programs, so they will take usually longer than most of the other programs that you are applying for. Once hopefully then offers start coming back, you can sit on those and wait until you get your final results to then decide whether or not you want to proceed with an offer from an Australian or New Zealand university. So in terms of what we do, so as you've heard me say, this is what I've been doing for the last 16 years in advising students for their university choices in Australia or New Zealand. So we are kind of here to make sure that you are, as fully prepared as you possibly can be. So it will usually start with a conversation with us about what you're trying to achieve. So what course you're looking to study, where you want to be, if you have an idea at this stage. Some people want to go to a particular university, some people want to go to a particular area based on family or friends or various other reasons. So we'll guide you on areas, on courses, on universities based on your academic background. We can also look at scholarships, and we will also help with accommodation, with opening bank accounts. We can waive the application fees, so you don't need to pay those if you are qualified applicant. Qualified applicant essentially means that you have sufficient grades to meet the entry requirements for the university, so you won't need to pay those. And then should you then decide to accept your offer for Australia and New Zealand, we will then guide you through everything else that is required to essentially get you out there. So full pre-departure support, which includes accommodation, booking your flights, and anything else that you might have. Look, it's at the end of the day, it is a big step to go from the UK to the other side of the world, and it's something that we've been doing for a very long time now. So we usually know the answers to most of the questions and can help with that. And we will also help you with your visa application. So again, it's a fairly lengthy process. Very lengthy application form, but it is a fairly speedy process. So an student visa application for a UK student will typically be granted, processed in less than a week. Sometimes it will come through within a matter of minutes under their auto grant system, but yeah, it's usually a matter of days for that to come through. So as I've said, we are a completely free service. We're funded by the universities in Australia and New Zealand to help students who are based in the UK. So thank you for listening. That's all my details there. Should you wish to find out more, just do a bit of research into the options in Australia and New Zealand. So thank you for listening.